Welcome to Beyond Names. I'm Dr. Habīb. This is a space for spiritual seekers and soulful misfits, for the curious and the committed, for those grounded in a tradition, and for those who are not sure what they believe. Whether you call the divine Yahweh, Allah, Elohim, Brahman, Great Spirit, higher power, or you're still searching for language that fits, you are welcome here. Together, we'll explore the intersection of spirituality and daily life, the wisdom of many traditions, and the ways we return to our true selves, to our source, to the light that each of us carry within. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin with the introduction of our conversation partner for this episode. I'm happy to have Vanessa McNamara as our conversation partner. I've known Vanessa for many years. We actually were in my first travel to graduate school long ago. Vanessa and I were both in the graduate school at the same time at Texas State. Vanessa is a spouse, a mother, a stepmother, sister, daughter, aunt. She's also a psychotherapist and family therapist with extensive experience and training in both individual and couples therapy. And she's passionate about relationships as spiritual work and about the intersection or the overlap between therapy and spirituality. To learn more about Vanessa and her work, please visit McNamaraTherapy.com. So Vanessa, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. This is a lot of fun.
So would you, as per usual, would you please introduce yourself by telling us a little bit about who you are and your spiritual story? So where you originated sort of spiritually, or your process of journeying with your spirituality, your spiritual engagement or lack thereof.
I,
What's the, yeah, any and all that you feel comfortable sharing.
when I listen to your podcast, this is like part of well, I don't know what the favorite part is, but I like hearing the guest spiritual stories. So I'm excited to have my chance. Thank you.
You're most
Um,
welcome.
so I was born in Ireland. I was born in Ireland in 1970. So there. And to a very Catholic family and very Catholic and big, kind of uh, what you'd imagine, Irish Catholic family. And what I liked about Catholicism then was that 45 minutes where my nervous system could relax during Mass. Beforehand might be chaotic, afterwards might be tough, but we had that 45 minutes. And then also it was Ireland. And so there's folklore and superstition and um, the winded howl, and someone would say, "Oh, the banshees, can you hear the banshee?" Or rainbow, where's the leprechaun going to get the pot of gold? Uh,
Mm,
Selkies in the ocean. I
mm,
like to think of it as like my father sky, mother earth, kind of first years in the world holding, you
mm,
know. And so yeah, divine masculine, divine feminine. And I developed a pretty rich inner life. There was it was a big family, but all brothers. And so I spent a lot of time by myself and outside.
mm,
And that really served me in many ways, but I kept my spiritual life kind of separate.
mm.
So fast forward, we moved to America, to Texas. Yeah, I'll stop to say like in my 20s, yeah, getting that master's in English. And that's when we were both TAs
Yeah.
for Dr. Grayson. And um, I remember we would grade papers and go to dinner. How much of this do you remember?
Very little.
It's okay. It's okay. But I do remember being at Mamacita's, and we were having dinner and we're talking about the existence of God. And I remember you saying, and you said this on a podcast, one of the episodes I listened to, I remember you saying, if there is a God, first you're arguing that there's no God.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then you said, well, if there is one, um, I don't like him. And I don't want anything to do with him. But it was, I remember just thinking it was fascinating because, there's drama and it's like grad school, and you wanted to talk about, like, is there a God? What's the purpose of life? Like these things, not even through the literature all the time, just straight. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's my primary memory of you.
That's awesome. Because I don't remember that at all. And I don't remember feeling that I mean I can totally see myself saying, yeah, if there's a God, I don't like him. But in my memory, it was more along the lines of, if God exists, it's like I'm going to reject him because I feel like he's rejected me, like that kind of dynamic of, and I've seen that play out in so many instances and people that I've met where they've had early childhood trauma that's been so painful that they felt abandoned by God or rejected by God or um, and so then they carry that in such a way that they have like, well, he wasn't there for me, so then he's not there at all, or that kind of thing. So I definitely remember having that kind of going through many years of that kind of thinking, but also just the fact that I brought it up to me is very telling that I must have been struggling with it even before I remember struggling with it, or even before I remember really thinking about it too much. So thank you for sharing that tidbit of our past.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
clearly. And I think it was complex like that.
yeah.
So, but all right. So then fast forward a few years, back to my spiritual source, fast forward a few years, I marry a Catholic man, have the 3 kids in 5 years. Um, and everything's going fine except there's a crisis, which is that the marriage really wasn't viable, not really. And when I turned to spiritual resources, well, religious resources,
Hmm.
I got the try harder,
Hmm.
right? Forgive more, try harder. And and I respect that. It just really wasn't um when I looked into the depths of my being, when I looked to talk to my higher self, I wasn't getting that. I was actually getting images of like Christ's crucifixion.
Hmm.
And there was this wonderful esoteric bookstore. I'm in Austin, Texas, and there was this at the time wonderful little bookstore near my house, and I would go over there and read Paramahansa Yogananda, Rudolf Steiner, like anything I could get my hands on. And I started opening up spiritually and learning that, yeah, maybe, right, getting divorced was my walking. That was my ego death, letting go of that identity. Um, I remember there was a traveling tarot card reader there. And I sat down and he said, "What's your question?" And I was like, "Well, should I stay in my marriage or not?" And he said, "Look, the cards are going to tell you to stay. The cards always tell you to stay." And I was like, "Okay." And my ego was actually kind of glad about that. Phew, I don't
Hmm.
want to go through divorce. I don't want to have my kids go to 2 houses. I don't want to do that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I want to continue to be a good girl, essentially, right? A good Catholic girl, but a good girl. And he pulled the cards and he was like, "Oh my God, no, that thing's got to end." So that was interesting. Um, but it was my mocking, right? It was an ego death to face the end of that and step into the unknown. Felt very held by the divine,
Hmm.
despite despite sort of everything that was going on the outside. Sometimes I say like death, disease, or divorce, right? They'll be the things that blow
Mm.
everything up so Allah can have us. But yeah. Um, and then so after that, I think I found the Sufi path and met CD. And so now I'm closer to 40, probably 20 years since not 20 years since I'd seen you, but like 15. Can you imagine my surprise when I walk into All Faiths Chapel on in Lamar on in Austin, and you were there in this small obscure terraca of Sufism, and I'm like, what?
What? Him again?
But yeah, so yeah, I still consider myself, I've done enough Buddhism, Catholicism, Sufism, shamanism, I consider myself all of it.
Mm, yeah. So for our listeners, CD is the Sufi sheikh through which we learned about Sufism and studied Sufism. So, and then the follow-up question, I think you just said you consider yourself all of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, does that mean that you don't identify as being in a particular tradition? You identify as sort of being you that your path is inclusive of the different traditions? Is that, or would you not even try and put your
So that's good. I'm glad you said. Well, people said, well, you can't really be in that one because you're that one. I'm like, nope, I'm all
no?
that and I'm all that, which I don't know, maybe that's just how I think of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That reminds me of and I'm not going to get this right, but there's a Rumi poem that's called One Song, and
Hmm.
it's basically conveying that, you know, there's so many voices out there singing so many different different things, but it's one song. Yeah.
Yes. And I only saw CD probably 6 times, but when I did, every time for some reason he's banging on the ground saying no separation.
Yeah.
And I think that was something, yeah, that's what I got. So,
And I have a memory of him with a gentleman who was is Native American, indigenous, um, and he talks to CD about Sufism, and I remember CD saying, "Same, same," same, same, and in his broken English, for lack of a better way of saying it, he was conveying, that there's commonality underneath all of these. Not to say that there aren't important differences, in theology and so on, but underneath there is this sameness. So, yeah.
mhm.
Okay. So you brought up some pretty big topics there. Uh, the first, the first one that I want to get to is just a question that I think maybe you were speaking about your childhood in Ireland, and you said something about your spirituality being separate. Um, can you tell me more about what you mean by that? And then,
Yeah, that goes into the relationship.
as a follow-up, like, how does that look? How is it different today? Like, what did you mean by that for then? And then what about today?
I think I just kept my relationship with God uh to myself,
Hmm.
right? And I was kind of in communication with what I knew to be God inside myself, my higher self, my Buddha nature, my Christ energy, whatever. But um if I it seemed dangerous to share it with people.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so this your question's time is good because it's kind of what like the integrating of that into my everyday life has been a big part of this part of my adulthood. It
Hmm.
in my work actually really lends itself to it. Um, there's, there's a hunger for the soul. for the places people can go to feel more connected to their soul, I think, and that can happen in the therapy room.
Mm,
And and so that is a place where the two meet
mhm,
for me, within me, right?
mhm,
Because really, unconditional positive regard, or really caring for this person in front of me, is the deep spiritual work, right? Non-judgment, non-resistance,
mhm,
accepting what accepting the moment as it is, no matter what it is.
yeah.
And so I think that answers it. But then another aspect of that is in relationship. So
Mhm,
that first marriage, had the outer look of being a religious union,
mhm,
but I don't know. I think because of my upbringing, being really kind and loving and patient with the people that you live with
mhm,
wasn't emphasized, right? So it's that, like, show up at mass, do the sacraments. That was just mine. There are many beautiful, beautiful Catholics out there, and
yeah.
the Center for Contemplative Action in Albuquerque's, you know, doing big work. There's lots of, so I'm not trying to suggest that there's anything wrong with Catholicism. It's just my family culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so some of that hypocrisy, really, I didn't know what to do with, except to know that I felt like I was hearing truth,
Mhm,
but you didn't really do that in your relationships. In my relationships, I let my parts take over, right? I let my guarded parts take over, my protective parts take over. Sometimes my inner child parts are taken over. That's what I
mm,
do in relationship. And
yeah.
so, in marriage, or civil union, long-term partnership, we talk about three stages, right? There's the honeymoon stage, the beginning.
Mhm,
I have a trainer who talks about that as the love without knowledge stage. Like, we don't really know the other person. We think we do, but and it goes into the power struggle stage, right? And this can be, anyway, the power struggle stage, which that trainer Terry Real calls the knowledge without love stage, right?
mm,
We
mm.
we know this person, but we're like, and to get through. And so if your spiritual walking is to stay in this relationship and get through it, then after, you want to move into that third stage, which is the vintage love or unconditional love stage. Like,
Mm,
this is the real deep acceptance of another one of God's beings with their parts,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
this is the crucible for me and for many people. Right. It's and that second stage, the power struggle, that, like, it can be such a dark night of the soul. It can really be a, like, oh my God, I made a huge mistake. Right. It can be
Yeah.
hard, dark.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that's the work.
that's the work.
Yeah.
And you know, um, I think this is such a wonderful topic, the intersection of spirituality and relationship, because it gets to like how do we live spirituality in our daily life, how we live our spirituality moment to moment, how we live our spirituality in every interaction, not only in our relationship to ourselves, but in relationship to the stranger when we go to the grocery store and the bank and so on, but also like in the most pivotal relationships of our lives and our um, life partnerships, our relationship to our families. Um, and it's just inestimably important. And I do not think that I could be, well, one, I wouldn't be here without the spiritual path in terms of like, I honestly, as I've shared in other podcasts on a somewhat limited basis. I've had some chronic health challenges, and I really feel like that it's because of my spiritual life that my body has been given kind of the chance to continue, because I feel like it's the heart and the soul has, and my experience through spiritual practice has been so enriching that it has buoyed the failing of my physical
Mhm.
body.
Yeah.
So one, I don't think I would physically be here, but then two, like I couldn't have, I think, moved through all of the traumas of my childhood through therapy alone. And this is one of the reasons I talk about. I feel like it's so important to care for body, mind, heart, soul, and not stop with body, mind, and that if we don't bring the heart and the soul into the picture, I feel like we're leaving out something essential. So I definitely don't feel like I could have made as much progress in my own personal journey in terms of personal transformation, in terms of personal healing, moving through old traumas, if it weren't for spiritual practice, committed daily spiritual practice. And then also just relationship wise, I know that when and I hope my beloved wife doesn't mind me talking about this, but when we got married, I still very much was carrying some of that association of love and abuse, or the association of emotions and abuse. Like if there were strong emotions present, then my body was telling me that I was in danger, that my life was in danger, that, it was like saying, abort, 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 you know?
This
And
is uh
and it only through my spiritual practices was I able to like arrive at that place of just bowing my ego.
That's it. That's exactly it. That is how you get from stage 2 to stage 3.
Yes, and
Balance.
just being present
Yes.
and just this moves me to tears, but just like
Mhm.
getting to that place when she's experiencing strong emotions that I can just be with her. You know, I don't I don't have to change anything. I don't have to fix it, but just to be with her in that and hold a loving space in the midst of those strong emotions. Like you have no idea what a transformation that is from who I was when we were in graduate school, however many years ago, to the person who can be in the face of strong emotions and just be present and just hold the space. Like that is only possible through devoted spiritual practice. So, what does that trigger any of those things? Trigger things that you want to speak to or respond to, or yeah,
Yeah, you're speaking it. That's how you get from stage 2 to stage 3.
yeah,
And so stage 2 is the power struggle or the like, ooh, what am I doing here? Can I do this? And in every relationship, it's harmony, disharmony, repair. That's happening on the micro and the macro, right? Even it can happen 10 times in a meal, in a dinner.
yeah,
Harmony, disharmony, repair as you go through that in conversation.
yeah.
And but when you're in the disharmony, like the intense emotion, right? That's the spiritual work. That's the time. Being in nature, it's not so hard to be spiritual. And what I mean by spiritual is like of the spirit, right? Getting, like you said, getting out of the ego, going into the heart, going into the inner anchor,
Mm,
um, that can that so often comes from real self-love, right? So part of this is knowing all of myself, and when I can accept the flaws in myself and love my shadow, I can do it now for my beloved more easily, right? For my partner.
mhm.
Um So you kind of spoke to that too, that like there's a self-love piece and then a piece about containing the other person. That's high level. That's amazing. Yeah, but that's it. That's how you get from its presence, it's it's knowing your nervous system, knowing your triggers,
Yeah,
loving yourself through the triggers.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
It's somatic practice is such a big thing these days, where we and it almost seems like it's become in vogue to talk about
Mhm.
trauma.
Yeah, I see that. Covered
Um,
something really important here, right? And so everyone's excited. Yeah.
um, and yet I think the thing that you're speaking to that is so important, and that is common amongst the various traditions, is the relationship that we have within ourselves to our own egos. You know,
Mhm.
you referred to your divorce as ego death,
Mhm.
and then you talked about the importance, or I guess we both sort of approached the topic of the importance of bowing the ego in terms of being in relationship and with others, that there's this aspect, and I've seen that is common in different traditions, and it doesn't even really matter if you're talking about a purely psychological approach like internal family systems therapy. If you're going to talk about your various parts of your personality, and then your higher self, which I think in IFS, internal family systems therapy, is, I don't, does he use self or just higher self?
Yeah, they just say self,
Self with a
right?
capital
That's
S, but he
uh-huh.
capitalizes it, right?
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's the divine within, right?
Yeah. So there's this commonality, whether you're talking about a pure psychological approach or you're talking about Buddhism or you're talking about Sufism, that there's this, that part of a spiritual walking is in our how we interact and how we are in relationship with our own egos. And is the ego in charge? Or do we hope for that part within ourselves, whether we call that part self or we would call it the sacred within or the inner? I think you use the term inner anchor, like what, regardless of the terminology that we use for that, it's the reality or the commonality is, do we become into relationship with that as much as or more than we are in relationship with our ego?
Hopefully more, right? That's the goal.
Right, but we have to first at least intend to that. Like
And,
we,
and see the ego, right? We have to go into consciousness and witness.
yeah,
I witness in my marriage now, and the walking now is to stay. Um, I've seen some things in the nooks and crannies about myself
yeah,
that that I wouldn't have. I don't know that relationship, of course, brings up to look at and places to. Um, I'll give you an example. Like, there's I talked about harmony, disharmony, repair, right? And the real intimacy can sometimes come between disharmony and repair.
mm,
And what I noticed just a few years ago was that I I was we do our harmony, disharmony, repair, but there was a part of me never fully repairing.
mm,
This was subtle. This is like maybe we were repairing and we'd hug afterwards, but I would hug not that tight. You
mm.
know what I mean? Like, or I had a variety of ways, and I don't even think that the light of my consciousness was on it until I
Yeah,
really slowed down and reflected, right?
yeah,
But there was, or maybe I'd just say that one little nice thing, but it was a little bit to where I was just one up. I'm just going to be one up, like just this
Mm-hmm.
much, right? And why was I doing that? Because I was protecting myself, because I didn't fully trust, right? It felt safer. Childhood and adult experiences, and even experiences in one's own relationship, if the relationship's been long and there's been some pain, some really painful experiences, all of those things had me to where I just didn't trust completely, being power with
Mm-hmm.
him. And yeah, so it's like the light of consciousness just keeps going into to to pull these things up, and in relationship they just really come up.
Mm-hmm.
And important that I see it and not shame myself,
Mm-hmm.
but okay, yeah, I am doing this thing. We
Yeah.
talk about or I talk about the U-turn. So if the relationship is in that second stage, like you turn in the moment when like there's tension and things are flaring. U-turn means not, I'm not looking at my partner, which is what we tend to do, is like, right? Like they're not showing up for me, they're not seeing me, they're not caring enough about me, they're selfish, whatever. You turn it, look here, and then really look, and look with the kind, gentle eyes of God, right? Look at yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so important. I feel like we should just sit with that for a second, that, and again, it's that idea of taking the U-turn is present in different traditions, that it's in IFS, to bring up IFS again. Um, but the importance of you you also mentioned with kindness and with love, like it's important if we want to practice mindfulness, or if we want to practice presence, or if we want to just practice relationship health, to learn to, when we are going outward, just to paraphrase what I'm hearing from you, is when our attention is going outward, to invite ourselves to turn our attention inward with a soft, compassionate, kind, loving witnessing of what's happening in our own minds, in our own bodies, in our own hearts. And from that place, then we can be in a more authentic relationship with our true self. So, yeah, thank you for bringing up that that reminds me of Jamal Rahman, who uses the term compassionate self-witnessing. And it's not easy. It's not easy to be honest with ourselves about ourselves.
That's right. The shadow work is the, oh no, not that. Right? And
Yeah,
that's where we want to bring the light into the, like, anything but that.
yeah. Not to belabor the point, but did there any particular suggestions? I know it's not easy, even if people who have devoted their lives to spirituality, it doesn't necessarily make compassionate self-witnessing or self-awareness easy. You know, any uh any suggestions or any
Yeah. So that's kind of so you said devoted their lives to spirituality doesn't make that easy. And I'm kind of wanting to reframe this, like, relationship. It's not necessarily the intersection, but like there's such an overlap.
Hmm,
And so that brings me back to sort of that beginning where I said, like, I kept my spirituality to myself, or it was in this separate place.
yeah.
And really having both. I want to have my deep inner rich life
Hmm.
and be able to see some of the, like, and lovingly see the darker places in myself, with acceptance too. I think that's the like, I'm only one person with her experience, but that's what I see happening.
Hmm.
It might be like the gift of what's happening right now somehow is like,
Yeah.
as we're looking and the darkness is like getting exposed. And we want world peace. We've got to have peace in our, in our living rooms, in our bedrooms. And that's where we can do something about it.
Yeah.
And, it's really important to me that I'm not sort of here just saying try harder, work harder
Hmm.
to people who, are in relationships and trying, because there's so much out there of that.
Hmm.
But what I'm wanting to do is like say there is hope. Kind of slow down,
Yeah.
and like don't be afraid to like look at yourself and love yourself.
Hmm.
And it's through that deeper unconditional sort of love and acceptance of yourself that you'll be able to do it for others
Hmm.
fully.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I'm gonna offer my own answer.
Okay,
What,
good.
well, what you said inspired me. It made me remember in a lot of the courses that I've taught, I encourage people to engage in noticing and nurturing. So, and that's just my way of my terminology for compassionate self-witnessing and self-care. But it's just like notice what's going on. Like when you're experiencing something in your body, when you're experiencing something emotionally, when your thoughts are spinning, whatever, but just like notice what's going on with your mind, body, heart. And and when you're not okay, like acknowledge that there's a flag on the play. So go into timeout, you know. So
Mhm.
and in that timeout, nurture. Like what does your body need? Do you need to engage in a somatic practice to bring some grounding and centering and sense of safety to your body? Like what does your mind need? What does your body need? What does your heart need? And I'm increasingly finding that what I need is to bring soulfulness to the daily, you know. So whatever daily activity it is, whether it's washing dishes or whether it's dealing with a particular challenge, that what helps me and sustains me through whatever that challenge might be, and what brings a more meaningful, more meaning, I should say, to the mundane, quote unquote, mundane activities, is to bring soulfulness to it.
Mm.
So, um, so
Is that like
I've been increasingly trying to foster that awareness of, like, for me, my own sense of where my soul is, and if I'm doing a practice, or to bring that practice together with that awareness of my soul, and in whatever the daily activity is. That may
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that made any sense, but
Makes sense. That's right. That's right.
um, yeah. And it makes my prayers deeper. Like if I set the intention of, like, if I'm saying this prayer right now, or if I'm doing this recitation, if I'm doing whatever, if I set the intention of having full acceptance of what's happening, and then bringing that into my soul, that particular prayer or that particular recitation into my soul, then um, that changes my experience fundamentally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That full acceptance, I think, is really key too, right?
That full acceptance.
Mhm.
It's such a, I love the Buddhism. emphasis on equanimity.
Mhm.
And, and I think in Sufism or in Islam, or even in any of the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, there's this emphasis on peace. What is it to carry and live with salam, shalom, you know, shanti? What is it to carry that in our hearts and our bodies? And to do that, acceptance is the key.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, right. Acceptance of being triggered. So if we're not in equanimity because, our beloved came in and said something we didn't want to hear,
yeah,
triggered something, right? And the past and the present get mixed up in that moment. It's okay. That's the deep acceptance of, whoa, yeah, I just felt that whoosh. I just feel this unexplainable anger or um annoyance, the irritability.
yeah,
And what do I do with that? Well,
yeah,
don't shame yourself. Don't shame yourself. Don't feel guilty, but do investigate it. Like give it attention, right?
yeah.
Love is attention.
I like the word investigate. Um, and it reminds me of one of my teachers who says every emotion is an invitation.
Mhm. That's right.
It's an invitation to grow more strongly attached to your ego self, or it's an invitation to travel deeper to your true self, to your higher self, and to, if a Sufi might say, intimacy with the beloved, capital B. You know, So each invitation, but that starts with acceptance. Do you accept getting triggered and do you accept the emotional response that regardless of who you are or how long you've been practicing whatever your journey is, you still have because we're still human.
And and like you said, it's there to tell you something, teach you something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And it's an invitation, like I just said, it's an invitation to go to who we truly are,
That's
to
right.
realize who we truly are, to be authentic, but end up being authentic in that place that brings the light of the soul together with the ego. You know,
That's
yeah,
one thing that's worked for me better than most things is the like present moment awareness and practicing present moment awareness. Like if I stop and go into, the present moment, it's like kids are in it all the time, right? And they're joyful and playing, but there's a joy in it,
yeah,
in the depth of each moment. Anyway, and so that has helped me when I'm getting dysregulated. And there's, a certain amount of mindfulness necessary to kind of notice I'm getting dysregulated and then like, okay, I'm gonna come into the moment right now and actually everything's okay.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
But there are many ways to do it. Calling on um calling on spiritual resources, like whatever works for someone's own nervous system.
yeah. So you mentioned going back to the to the idea of spirituality both being so integral to how we are in relationship, um, but also that idea of spirituality as separate. Like to go back to that comment that you made about your experience in your early life with spirituality as separate. I think that so many of us, or all of us, we've all had pain. We've all had trauma.
In
We've
the design. That's right.
we've all had places of where we're like, okay, I need to constrict in order to protect myself,
That's
right?
right. Mhm.
And then, but when we're talking about this acceptance and bringing together the ego and the soul, there's some of that protectiveness and that like keeping separate of, that we may have done with our hearts and our spirituality, that we have to loosen a little bit. Like there has to be some sort of relaxing or opening in order for that to happen. So,
Abs-
do you have any tips, or any favorites for how you encourage that opening or that relaxing for that journey to the true self, that journey, that inward journey?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of what we've been speaking about.
Mm,
So, but you're right on. It is that relaxing
mhm,
of our guards, right? Our protective separateness from the person and being more comfortable with our vulnerability
mhm,
to get to the intimacy. So the ways, like every person's really unique, relationships are unique. Like there's the general broad strokes, right? But there's the uniqueness. But this goes back to learning yourself, giving yourself the attention
mhm,
enough to say, oh, yeah, this is that guard I keep up.
mhm,
Um, it's really hard for me to not have power, maybe, because in childhood I didn't have power, so I always need a little. It's really hard for me to not that was you can see that's my work, right? It's really not hard for me to not feel like I've got power,
mhm,
which translated into a little bit of guardedness.
mhm,
Um, and certainly translated into not wanting to be vulnerable
mhm.
and open with my beloved, after that honeymoon stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it goes back. I think it's what we're saying, like really gently with soft, loving eyes, look at those places in yourself
Mhm,
for whatever reason you decided to pick up something that would protect you, and you're carrying that now, and it would be better if you let that go now.
mhm. And it's not always easy.
I think it's some of the hardest stuff any of us do.
Yeah. I think of I probably have shared this in other podcasts, but in spiritual formation courses that I've taught, I've shared that I think of the spiritual journey or the process of personal transformation and personal growth as being a process of, I call it the R's. So the first R is remembering. So depending on your tradition, it's, for a Christian, it's, remembering your Christ nature. For a Muslim, remembering Allah, so whether it's remembering Elohim or whether you're coming from a more secular position, remembering your higher self or your true self or remembering your Buddha nature. So first are remembering, uh, then the second is reading. So for me, reading can be reading the signs of sacredness wherever they are. So in yourself, in other people, in all of the creation. So reading, including reading, literal reading, reading the sacred texts for your tradition or no tradition. So remembering, reading, reflecting. So you have to spend some time in reflection, um, and then receiving and returning. So a lot of what we're talking about to me reminds me of the receiving aspect of, like, if we can't open to receive love and light,
Mm.
then it makes it difficult for us to give love and light if we're not receiving love and light. So for me, I like to espouse the importance of establishing that relationship with your truer self or higher self or the divine or the beloved or God, in accordance with your tradition or no tradition, in terms of allowing there to be an intimacy of love, an intimacy of receiving in your deepest self, that sense of love and that sense of the light that each of us carry, or that sense of the sacredness that each of us carry, or if you're from a theistic tradition of the divine breath, or the divine fragrance, or the divine spirit, or the divine essence that each of us carry within. So I feel like that receiving part is what we're getting to a lot in this conversation around how do we receive uh, the love and light in order to the last our return, in order to return to our true selves and realize the potential that that each of us were created with.
Beautiful. Yep, that's right. All of those, and return in relationship to our partner.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those.
To loving relationship with, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, a relationship of just holding the love for each other. Yeah. Yeah. So how do you, given all of this, how do you experience the sacred?
Ah, I love this question. Um, I mean, really integrated, I think. This is where my since my work helps.
Mm,
People say, um, why would you want to do that? You just get to listen to people's problems all day. But and it's like, oh, it's so like um I see the spirit like working so that
mm,
Jung talked about like when people, whether it's a couple, like relationship work or individual work or whatever, but the universe will um help you, right? Support you.
mhm,
The signs start happening. And
mhm,
so someone has endeavored to go higher, and
mhm,
um and you know it's it starts to be evident. Maybe it's the light of the soul that starts coming through. And
mhm,
now there is more like honesty and alignment in life and more balance and more love.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
I have to keep up my practices too.
Mhm,
Chanting is where I purify, like that's the purification usually for me. And but I think it's fun. I think drum circles are fun. I think all that, it's
mhm,
it's fun. But I think there's the integration of of spirit in my life is facilitated by my job. Maybe I'd say that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And your job has helped you into, it sounds to me like, if I may say so, it sounds like the integration that you find is facilitated by your professional work has facilitated your personal.
Definitely a feedback loop.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know which goes where, but yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Well, any parting words of wisdom or any parting recommendations in terms of spiritual practice or any closing thoughts that you would like to share?
Well, first I want to thank you so much. Really, like I said earlier, the integrity of the podcast
Mm,
um is I find hard to find other places because it's so wide and open.
mhm,
And like the allowing, which of course is something in relationship that's pretty important, but the allowing for it all to come together
yeah.
and still be, I'm putting my hands up, like, and still be high.
Mhm,
is a rare and very beautiful thing. So I really want to thank you for that, sincerely, sincerely. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're already doing it. You're already doing it, So,
Yeah.
you know, good for you. Like that's it. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa, for being here, and for the great conversation.
Well, it was a good conversation. So good to see you again.
Likewise. It's nice to reconnect. That's one of the beautiful things about the podcast too, is reconnecting with people that I haven't seen in many years.
Blast.
A blast from the past. Well, thank you to all listeners for joining us on Beyond Names. Before we go, briefly just take one breath and reflect for just a moment on what stayed with you from this conversation with Vanessa. May something you heard today help you reconnect with the light in your own heart. May you grow in compassion, clarity, and courage. May you grow in compassionate, loving, kind self-witnessing. It allows your heart to fill with love and fill with light that overflows to all those that you meet. May you find your way again and again back home to yourself, back home to the divine, back home to the sacred, however you name it. If today's conversation spoke to you, please like, share, and comment. To make an appointment with me, please visit Habīb Burger, HABIBBOERGER.com. If you would like to connect with Vanessa, her website again is McNamara Therapy, McNamara therapy.com. Until next time, may you be light, may you carry light, may you consciously participate in growing your light, and may you share your light. Peace be with you.